Hi guys, welcome back to the shop. Thanks for joining me this week. We left off last week with our glue up of our tri-lam bamboo back and belly flat laminations bow in the mold drying. This week we're going to take some time and go through just the process of taking it out of the mold. And you'll see that it gave up a little bit of some of the shape when we first take it out. And then encountering a couple different issues to get to this point. So not as cut and paste as you may think, or as predictable an outcome as maybe I would have hoped for, but we have got it, I've got it to the string obviously. And if you hang in there, to the end of the video, I go through some processes to get this limb straightened out. So it doglegs a little bit at the original portion of this build, and I go through the process for correcting that type of twist or misalignment in your limbs. All right guys, straight out of the mold, I'm kind of surprised at how much of that recurve it gave back. I think it came back a whole inch and a half, and it came back evenly on both sides. Now I haven't taken it out and flexed it at all, but just interesting to me that it gave that much away, or gave it back straight away. So yeah, let's get it out and flex it a few times, see where we landed in terms of resistance or weight, and we'll just continue working from here. All right, so here is the bow. All I have managed to do up to this point is just take the plastic off so that I can get something of an idea of how well this came out, or get an idea of the weight. And so here's kind of the initial bends, and I would tell you that the flex on this is actually not very stiff. My guess is that this will probably end up somewhere in the 30 pounds at 28, maybe a little more. We'll see what we can salvage. But from here, obviously we're going to have to get our tips lined up. And I don't know if you can see it right here, but we got a lot of misalignment, different sizes of lambs coming together here. I think what I'm going to do is try and take down all these edges to the maple core, and use the maple core as the guiding force, if you will, or the guiding measure to get everything straight. It did seem to glue up relatively straight as far as any twists are concerned, but the and left the tips extra wide, so we'd have a lot of opportunity to thin these down and still work on alignment because the limbs are so wide. So that is what we're going to tackle today, is see if we can't get this guy at least to brace height. So we're going to have to get some string knocks in there and kind of go from there. All right, I want to really make a point of taking some measurements on this before we get going with everything. So here's the shapes of those limbs across the length of the bow there. Did get, I guess, you know, something of a Duoflex. It is a accelerating recurve as we approach the tip. But I want to get a measure of this. This is where we're going to kind of get a picture of where the strain occurs on this, or when or how the strain occurs. So the back of the grip is set back 2 inches. Now, mind you, we have not cleaned up the extreme tips, so I'm actually going to have to trim a little bit off of here just to get everything evened up. But 2 inches is a good guidepost. So as we progress through the tillering of this bow, we're taking it to full draw. We are going to see how much of that 2 inches we give up in the form of string follow. I have removed the blue tape from the back and the belly, and kind of sanded down these the rough edges, not entirely, so you can still see a little bit of glue residue left in there. A little concerned, this is actually an overlap, or not an overlap, but I'll take that back. That's a pencil line on there. On one of these sides here, this side, it's just barely. And we've got the glue line exposed here around the edge of the backing strip. So that might take a little bit of work in terms of sanding and finishing. I don't know. It depends on how much we're able to narrow this portion of the limb. Trimmed off these edges square. So we're ready to go in and put in some temporary knocks. As far as like the glue line is concerned, here is my the start of my riser piece, and you can see that unlike the last one, got really good glue lines in through here. Both sides kind of appear that way. There's a little bit of ghosting right here, but that has more to do with just needing to sand back some more. So that backing strip, it's got a nice solid line on it. Even in through here, it kind of looks like there's some pencil width in there. Once that's sanded down even, that's going to disappear. So got some really good, got a real good lamination put together here. So I'm really pleased with that. Like I said, at this point, we'll just put in some temporary knocks, put a string on it. Got her strung up here, a little short of a good string height. So kind of I call it a low brace height. Pulled on it a few times, and I might have been a little hasty in my attempts to get some tugs in on there to kind of see where we're bending, and have encountered our first problem. This is a problem. I'm not even going to call it an opportunity. This is a straight up problem. If we look at this limb here to the fade out, down to the string, we're in that 5.5 inch mark to the string. From this fade out, we're more like 6 inches. So we've got a gap on this limb that's a 1/2 inch greater than the gap on this limb. And you can almost see right here where it's taking quite a bend in comparison to right here. Right, and this recurve returns a little bit better, and this recurve starts to straighten out a little bit more. If I get my string lined up right with the edge of the workbench there, you can see that this does have a pretty good return on it. This one's still retaining some, but not as much, and that's a function of having too much bend up in here that's kind of robbing the recurve to some degree. Now, I'm trying to sort out what caused it, and I don't know if it was me pulling on it prematurely, which I don't know that that's necessarily it. I mean, these pieces were, it's not like I had taken any wood off to cause any kind of hinge, and I'm going to hesitate to call this a hinge just yet. We're just bending more in here than we should be. And so I'm looking at this other limb, and when I've laid out some measurements, I am a little bit wider on this limb here than I am on this limb here. So when I was taking off wood, I've taken a little more off the edges of this one than I have on here. And so that's where I'm going to start with this, is to remove just a little bit more off of the edges of this limb to see if I can't get these two limbs to even up in terms of their strength to the string. And then if I need to start doing some heat treatments, that's what I will do. Although this belly lamb has been tempered to the point where it's like toasted, literally. It's the color of toast, like almost burnt toast. So I'm not sure how much, what the heat is going to do for us, but it certainly can't hurt. I mean, this is just like anything. If you've got a bow that's kind of starting to fail, I mean, you can't make it fail any worse, trying to fix it. So you don't fix it, it fails. You try to fix it and it fails, well, you lost nothing, or gained nothing less than what you had before. So I'm going to go ahead and go through that. And, this is kind of the perils of me taking you guys through these builds as they go along, instead of documenting it start to finish and then putting them up on YouTube for you guys to view. You're kind of seeing this at the same time as me, and hopefully I can do something to try and salvage this bow. Here is the heat treatment setup. I'm not sure if you can see it very well. I put an X on my belly where it was bending too much, so coming right out of the fade, it was bending a little too much right out of the fade on that one limb. And so what I have done is kind of inverted or reversed the direction that it was bending too much, and I have heat treated it. Took my heat gun and put some good heat to it. Now, not to put like a permanent type bend. Okay, so the idea here is not to put a permanent bend in the opposite direction, but more to help fortify that section of the limb. So kind of temper it a little bit more than the remainder of the limb, so that it will hold its own a little bit better than the other portions of the bow. And so the way I have it set up is it's just clamped down here, and I concentrated the heat right in this one section. I can feel little bits that are raising up on that belly. And then just a couple clamps out on the far tip just to add some weight. It started probably up here, and in the course of heating it has come down, a little bit more, just to know that I'm getting something. All right, so I did measure the fall here, and it probably fell about 2 or 3 inches. And it'll spring back, of course, once I take it out of this mold or out of the form. But this should hopefully be a little bit stronger than it was prior to going in. So we'll see what this does to the tiller. I've got to allow it to cool. And I mean, when it comes to cooling, you got to heat the limb through the entire depth of the limb. All right, so it's got to be heated all the way through, which means when you allow it to cool, it's got to cool all the way through. And the cooling process takes much more time than the heating process in this instance. So I'm allowing it to cool off here in the garage, which really shouldn't be too hard of a deal. I can't imagine that it's even 50 degrees in here, but we got to let it cool all the way to the core. And then we will string it up again and see what we get. So I have heat treated I don't want to call it a hinge, the spot in the one limb that was bending a little too much based on our measurements. And then I also narrowed the stiffer limb, gosh, I have a hard time getting my camera right here, so that I want to say that we have gotten a little closer in terms of tiller as a result. Here's our measurements. This was this guy right at the fade is at about 5.5 inches at the fade on this limb, just over 5.5, right, 5 5/8, maybe 5 3/4, depending on what part of the string you read, which is actually identical to this side, off by about 1/16 of an inch. And so if I'm, trying to toy with this bow anymore, I really wouldn't toy with the tiller anymore. I would just call this my upper limb, because it's bending just a smidgen more than this limb. And so you want your stiffer limb on the bottom, so that's how I would designate this. At this point, it comes down to getting these tips tracking straight. And so I'm going to put this in a vise and kind of go over the methodology for straightening out those tips and truing up our string on the center of this bow. All right, so we're going to take a look at the alignment on these limbs, and truthfully, I'm just going to kind of focus on this, what is the top limb, for a moment. And you can see that it is just barely kind of taking off in this direction. Not by much, but it does, you can see it comes straight out and then kind of dog legs to what would be the right as we're looking at it. And fixing this really just is not much trouble at all, guys. I mean, there's a lot of anxiety, I think, around twisted limbs or limbs that don't track straight, but this is real straightforward. It's bending evenly, right, front to back. It's just not straight from tip to tip. And all we're going to do to get the string, okay, tracking back down straight, because what's happening here is the string is actually tracking to the right as well. We're just going to take in this knock and continue to take in this knock until everything tracks straight, and then we'll take off material on this side of the limb till the depth of this knock matches the depth of the opposite knock, and everything will be straightened up by then. So this is the knock that we want to take in right here. And in all things related to making a bow and making any kind of adjustments to your bow, whether that be taking off material on your belly when you're doing any tillering, or trying to affect the weight of your bow by removing material, you always want to remove just a little bit to get the effect that you're looking for, and approach that result systematically. So you don't want to try and hit a home run right off the bat and get it right on the first trip. What you want to do is take this down just enough to invoke a change. All right, so I've taken this in. Let's see if I can't show you. So I've come in to a pencil mark that I drew, which is, it doesn't look noticeably different, but it is going to have a pretty big effect on the finished result. So we're going to leave it as such, and I am going to string it up again, get it tracking right, and then we're going to take a look at the result here. So I've had this thing unstrung and strung back up now 5 different times as I've taken in this knock over here. Still need to take some material off of that one side to wrap up the alignment, but you can see here that we are awfully doggone close. Awfully close. And so I'm pleased enough with the alignment to move forward from here. So at this point, we are in alignment. We've managed to get it strung. We've done a little bit of tillering work to get the limbs to bend evenly, at least to brace height. And at this moment, or at this point, we begin the regular approach to full draw, and work the tiller as best we can, most likely through heat and or a little bit of removal on the sides of these limbs. I'm not necessarily going to narrow both tips just yet. I'm going to go ahead and get it close to full draw so that I can flesh out any other twist or anything else that's going on with it, and then move on from there to the peaking and tweaking portion of this build. But for the time being, here we are. We are at brace height. We are in alignment, and we are prepared to start our approach to full draw. And that is going to take us to the conclusion of this particular installment. Guys, hang around with me for next week. Like and subscribe if you want to get the little notification alert that the video is up. But we should hopefully, by the next installment, have this guy at least close, if not to full draw, and moving on to the finishing touches.